Okay, we should be live.
Great. Just give it a minute for everyone to join. Okay, looks like we're holding steady now. So thank you everyone for holding on for us. We had a quick executive session. Now we're going to be starting our regular meeting agenda. And the first item is the approval of the minutes for July 19th, 2021. I was wondering if anybody had any questions or comments. Okay, can I have a motion to approve the minutes of July 19th, please?
I move that we approve the minutes of July 19th.
Second.
Great. Julia,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
oh, Matt, aye, sorry.
Aye.
Shannon, aye. It's gonna be a good one. Okay. And then next we have reports for the school committee. First one is from Dr. Klingeman, please.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to follow up a bit on the masking email that I shared last week. Just again to review some of the information that was shared. So currently DESE and the Department of Public Health are strongly recommending that all students in pre-K, kindergarten through grade 6, as well as unvaccinated individual students and adults wear masks when indoors, except for students who have individual circumstances. We won't be having students wear masks outdoors, and they may be removed while eating indoors. The guidance also suggested that any individual that's higher risk or those who have a household member who's higher risk, they're encouraged to continue to wear masks regardless of their vaccination status. And they've also asked schools to be sensitive to any child or family who prefers to mask at school, even if they are vaccinated, should be supported in this choice. And I had mentioned in the email we sent out last week that all students and staff are required to wear masks on school buses and in the school health offices. So we have a meeting planned in August with the Duxbury Board of Health, the public health nurse, and our district nurse leader to plan for our district protocols and recommendations and just get on the same page with the town in terms of our response to the current status of COVID and any restrictions that are being recommended. DESE has not yet released information to us about close contact identification or quarantine guidelines, but they did tell us that would be coming out during the month of August. So we will continue to share that out with the community as soon as the information becomes available to us. Today we met with the principals to just continue our work on fall planning, and the principals are going to plan to be at our next school committee meeting to present to the committee and to the parents and students in the community about what to expect in the schools this fall. While it won't be as restrictive as last spring, we anticipate, we do think that there still will be some restrictions in place that we want to make sure the community is aware of and has a chance to hear and discuss. I just want to acknowledge how upsetting the news was that I shared with the community yesterday. I can only imagine what it was like to receive an email like that from me, especially one of that nature. And in light of everything the community's gone through in the past few months, I'm sure it is even more upsetting. Just want to reiterate that we take concerns like this very seriously, and we treat them as sensitively as we possibly can, given the really sensitive nature of the content of what was alleged. We will be conducting an independent investigation, which we don't have an independent investigator hired yet, but I have a meeting tomorrow with a potential person that will be doing that. And we have been cooperating with the police and any other local agencies for the past few days. So that is really all I can really say to that, but I didn't want to not acknowledge that upsetting email that went out to the community yesterday. Also, my last comment, I asked Mr. Donovan to come and join me in my opportunity to comment, because there's so many important athletic hires that are happening this summer, and we understand that it's really important to the families and student athletes to have some of these positions filled. We were really happy to be able to share with you our interim athletic director candidate, but Mr. Donovan's going to just give a brief update on the status of some of the other hires.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Danielle, for having me, and it's nice to see you all again. So
As you may have saw yesterday, we put out a press release about hiring Jeff Maidman as our interim athletic director for the coming year. Jeff is really a great hire for us. He has 30 years experience as an athletic director in Massachusetts, Virginia, and Rhode Island, primarily independent schools, entirely independent schools. However, the last 10 or so years that he was at Moses Brown in Rhode Island, they were part of the public school Rhode Island Interscholastic Athletic League. And so, you can, an equivalent would be, a school like if Tabor or Boston College, BC High participating in our MIAA. So he's very familiar with public school athletic administration, ran a program that had over 90 coaches and very similar programs, everything from hockey to sailing. And so he was on site yesterday and has already begun meeting with coaches. And we put together an entry plan, which has him meeting with everyone from our primary goal is to follow coaches, the athletic boosters, the rec department, and other key district personnel. And so Danielle and I are looking forward to introducing you to Jeff at a coming meeting. But he is here and which is good for everybody. As previously announced, the football coach, Mr. Landolfi, is in place. That staff is pretty well set and up and running. And that program starts on August 20th. We announced our girls basketball coach yesterday as well. I expect to announce our boys hockey coach tomorrow. I'm just finishing the end of the reference checks on the two finalists. For all of these committees and boys and girls cross country, our fall cross country coaches, both of our previous coaches notified me in late June and early July that they were not planning on returning this fall. And so we expect to have an announcement on who those new coaches will be early next week. So I want to thank recognize all the parents, students, community members who have been a part of the screening committees for the athletic director of football, girls basketball, and boys hockey committees. I'm going to be forming a girls hockey committee. I've already started to reach out to people to be part of that screening committee, and we hope to have those interviews next week now that our athletic director is in place. So that's our timeline. All the other program athletic teams for the fall are ready to go. Our family ID site is up and running. Families are registering. We will be ready to go on August 20th for football and August 23rd for all of our fall sports. And we're looking forward to Jeff coming and meeting all of you here and to beginning the fall season.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Donovan.
Who's the girls basketball coach? I didn't see that.
Brian Keller, Mr. Keller.
Oh, okay.
And you've had screening committees work with you for all these hires?
For all but the boys and girls cross country.
Right.
And that is primarily because of the size of the applicant pool. I should say that's entirely because of the size of the applicant pool. There are just not a lot of applicants for traditionally for cross country.
Right. Got it. Okay. But
yes,
going forward, you'll be using screening committees for these types of hires?
Yeah, our goal is absolutely for the coming school year that we're going to use a screening committee for every coaching position, that varsity coaching position where we need to.
Okay.
And there's an applicant pool that's large enough that makes sense to do so.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
Jim, does that screening committee change each time?
Yep. Each committee has been different. So we've tried to have a member of or a community member who's been a part of the youth program. So for example, for the boys hockey program, Dave Rakowskis was the representative from youth hockey, even though his kids have graduated from the program. He served in that committee. We generally have a captain or two from each team. Sometimes we have a sub-varsity player, so a freshman or a sophomore, one or two parents, usually a member of the PE or another coach in that season. So, for example, our boys varsity coach was on the girls varsity coach interview panel. And so each of the screening committees have been about 8 to 11 or 8 to 12 people. And generally it's been 2 members of the athletic advisory committee.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Donovan. Any more questions on this topic? Okay, Dr. Clemming, do you have any further updates?
No, that was all from me. Thank you.
Okay, I think the one thing, my one question on was your initial one about having the principals at the next meeting to share what to expect. Let's talk about the timing of that. And I think we can do logistics offline, but that means I think we'll have to fit in another meeting within about 2 weeks to make sure we get that out before school starts,
That's
right?
what we were hoping, a mid-August, because we were thinking that
Okay.
possibly any DESE guidance would be out by then. And we'd have a little
Okay.
better picture of COVID and have the opportunity to talk to the Department of Health from town.
Okay, all right, so we'll plan on that. I think one of the things that, well, this is part of my report, but since it ties in, having a in-person meeting sometime in early September, so that we'll just add another remote meeting to cover this topic and then switch to in-person in early September. Okay, great. So next on the agenda is a report from Ms. Wilcox, Interim Assistant Superintendent.
Good evening. I wanted to share some updates from our summer programming. Today concluded a 3-week summer program for students in K through 5. We had approximately 80 students participate over the past 3 weeks in a half-day program, and students were working on skills in ELA and math. In addition to that, we have been working on our new teacher induction program, which will take place the 3rd week in August. And we are looking forward to having those teachers come in and to review our expectations and to go over specifics to Duxbury. And we have a large group for that. We have approximately 29 teachers, but that is due to retirements, some movement even within staff, as well as some staff members who have left the district and moved into roles in other districts. In addition to that, I just wanted to provide the committee with an update on homeschooling applications, and we have had 23 to date this year, and that is a difference from 38 last year. And those are the updates that I have for now.
Just curious, do we know what the number was for homeschooling pre-COVID the year before?
I don't have that information, but I can certainly find out.
I'm just curious.
It was probably between 8 and 15 for the
Okay.
few years before that.
Okay.
And all those 29 new staff members are, Katie, you can remind me, our budget, we have a small increase in FTE related to something, but it's not actual increase in the number of staff, right?
Right. So the one position that we did have that was an addition from previous years was the social worker at the middle school. And so that, if you all remember, that's something that we had put forward before, but we had to make that cut because we didn't, not knowing that we were going to get the level services budget. But because we were funded at level services, we were able to add that position. So that was a great addition for us. And then one other staff member that we had talked about previously in previous meetings was the district's new DEI coordinator. And then the remainder of the 27 is just reallocations of existing positions.
But the DEI coordinator wasn't a new FTE because that was due to having less staff members due to the reorganization of the technology department. So we only really have the one new FTE, that is the middle school adjustment counselor, social worker.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so no other questions. We'll move on to Ms. Blake's report for the school committee.
Hi, everyone. So I have a few updates for you tonight. First, with some personnel news, I just wanted to let you all know that the town and the school's facility director has left the district. The position is currently posted, and I believe that the expectation is that the new director should start sometime in early September. But in the meantime, we do still have some major capital projects that are currently in process throughout the district. And one of the bigger projects is the Chandler HVAC modernization project. And just to provide you an update on that project, it's well underway. And there was a project management meeting today, and it seems as though that the project is on time and should be completed well before the start of school. So also just as a quick note, we've wrapped up transportation registration for the upcoming school year. We are continuing to partner with First Student to provide transportation, which we often refer to as yellow bus transportation. And we also have a new manager / dispatcher joining us to work here in Duxbury. So the new manager, her name is Noelle Burke, and she is joining us from the Whitman-Hanson Abington School District. So I spoke with Noelle today, and she's eager to get started. In her previous district, she works on coordinating routes for 42 buses. So she certainly has the experience to be able to help us here in Duxbury with the routing for the upcoming school year. Just from a budget standpoint, I'm currently in the process of looking at the budget implications for all of our employee shifts. So we just mentioned with the 29 new employees, it certainly will have some impacts on the fiscal year 22 budget that we had put forth at the beginning of last year, or last fall, I should say. And so that process that we go through to realign the budget, we often reference it as the budget recast, and that's typically how we classify it in the budget calendar. So that's the process that I'm walking through right now, and that will help us build our level services budget for fiscal year 23. So I do anticipate that at the next school committee meeting, I'll have a draft copy of the fiscal year 23 budget calendar available to share with you all, so you can just get a better idea. It's pretty consistent year over year, but it does provide a good idea of the timing of when some of the important finance and budget meetings will happen throughout the year. So more than happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
And speaking of, Rob, we should also share the joint meeting that the select board has called. What is the date on that's coming up?
The 23rd.
August 23rd.
23rd. Yeah.
So that's the
6 p.m.
first, that's kind of the first meeting on this cycle, right?
Yes. Yep. And I believe that that's going to be in person at the senior center.
And has it been posted as a joint school committee posting a meeting so that we can all go?
I
Yes.
believe so. Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, Kelly, you had a question.
I do. Katie, since you brought up the yellow bus, maybe you can or not, speak to, there's some rumblings I've seen about other towns not charging for the school bus. Can you give us a little feedback on that? Where do we
Sure, yeah.
stand?
Of course, yes. So the transportation program here, so it is a fee-based program. I do know that some other towns, neighboring towns, do not charge for transportation for yellow bus. So here in Duxbury, the state requires us to provide transportation to students in grades kindergarten through 6 if they live a certain distance away from the school. And so for those students that live within a 2-mile radius of the school district in grades K through 6, we classify those as fee-based students. And they, if they'd like to register and ride the bus, they pay a fee. Any students that are in grades 7 through 12, and I believe the reasoning typically, regardless of what district you're in, is because it's not mandated transportation by the state. So the state is telling us that we are not required to provide transportation to those students in grades 7 through 12. However, because we do, we can then charge a fee to the parents if they opt that their students are going to participate in transportation. So the way that it's structured here is K through 6. If you live within 2 miles of the school district, you have to pay a fee, and all students who ride the bus, regardless of distance, have to pay a fee for transportation. And so I will also say, just as some more information, that fee, we use that fee as an operating budget offset. So any reduction to an operating budget offset has the same impact as an increase in an expense. So if there was ever any consideration to potentially reduce or to eliminate the fee, it would have the same impact as right now the offset is $200,000. So it would have the same impact as a $200,000 increase in an expense to the operating budget. So just something to keep in mind as we kind of gear up for fiscal year 23 budget preparations.
Thank you. Do you know the cost of just the students within the 2 miles where it's mandatory if we cut everybody else out?
I
So
don't
if we,
know that off the top of my head, but
does it make a difference, I guess,
got
is the
it.
question?
So the cost, if we were to operate just the buses for K through 6, and so I would have to look at the fee. So the way that our contract is structured, we have 3 tiers, meaning we run 2 elementary runs and then the secondary for both the middle school and high school. And it's a fee per bus. And because we're at capacity within those tiers, I don't know that we would necessarily be able to eliminate any buses. It would just be that we would only be running 1 tier instead of 3 tiers or something to that similar. So I'm sorry, Kelly, I know that probably doesn't answer your question, but I can certainly look into it for you.
No, it does. And I'm guessing we've already negotiated the contracts anyways.
Yep, so the contract we reviewed that this past February, we negotiated, we had a consultant, Rich Labrie, work with us to try to work through that. It was the IFB process that we went through. And so we did end up contracting with First Student for the 3 years with a 2-year option.
If there are no more bus related questions, with regard, going back to Brian Cherry and the forgotten what building facilities manager, are you or is Dr. Klingeman going to be involved in the hiring process?
So I believe we'll be involved in both screening the candidates and I believe that we'll be involved in the interview process. Yes.
Good, because our experience with Brian was that you guys relied on him a great deal. So your input would be valuable to that process.
Yes.
Okay. So next on the agenda is the chair update. And I think all the topics that I want to talk about are actually within our discussion items. But I did have one member reach out and say that they wanted to cover something. So Ms. Bresnahan.
Boy, you guys are so happy I'm back.
Yeah.
I just wanted to draw attention to an MASC bulletin we got in regards to critical race theory, because that's a hot topic right now. So basically, I'm going to read what it is. CRT is a framework and/or analytical tool primarily used in university level courses. Originating in the 1970s, CRT was first used as a way to help law students think critically about the impact of historical and present-day racism on the legal system. In the 1990s, some colleges of education also started incorporating CRT into their coursework to help aspiring school administrators and teachers better understand inequities in the context of education. And a lot of that was in urban settings. What it isn't, critical race theory is not part of social studies curriculum and has never been part of social studies curriculum frameworks in Massachusetts. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there because I know there's a lot of questions about it. Thanks.
And that was from the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So our next, I lost my agenda, here it is. The next item, we're moving into discussion items, and the first item on the list is vendor search update for the superintendent search process. And I'm going to ask Ms. Blake to provide an update to everybody on where we are with the vendor process.
Sure. So we did receive one proposal, and I had forwarded that along to you all, and I'm more than happy to put a copy of that proposal in the folder for tonight's meeting as well, just to have another copy. And so the proposal that we received was from the Collins Center. And so the Collins Center is an intergovernmental agency. And so they are exempt from any of the the 30B procurement laws. And so we can enter into a contract with the Collins Center, regardless if we've gone out to solicit multiple quotes, or regardless if we go through the invitation for bid process. And so I would definitely urge you all, if you haven't had the opportunity to look through that proposal. I had at one point reached out to the assistant superintendent in Weymouth, as they had very recently gone through the process of searching for a new superintendent. And they utilized the Collins Center, and they provided a really positive, lots of really positive feedback on that process and their interaction with the vendor. I will also say that we did post the request for a proposal. We did not receive any responses back to that posting. I also was in contact with the Inspector General's office, just because we had received the proposal from the Collins Center, but that was kind of a separate process. And just asking them in guidance and what were the best next steps to take for this process. And that's mostly in regards to the procurement, just making sure that we're walking through the right process and making sure that we're doing everything in accordance to the Mass General Law. And so the guidance that I received from them was not to reissue the RFP, just because of the parameters of the cost of the contract, because we're following below the $50,000 threshold, and that it would be appropriate for us to look at any intergovernmental proposals that we receive, or the only other option would be to be able to send out a statement of work to solicit for 3 bids. And that was just the guidance. So I'm happy to answer any questions about, I don't know if there's any questions about the proposal or kind of the RFP or the procurement process, but that's the update from my end.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that was super helpful. Thank you for reaching out to, was it the Inspector General? Is that the government person? Because I think that was like the primary question is, can we or should we reissue the RFP? And so that guidance is pretty defining for us, that the state agency or the state authority has said, no, that's not appropriate here. And then, so the next two options are, we have the Collins Center and we have the option to solicit 3 bids. And I think just the 3 bids, if we do that, then you have to select the lowest bid coming in, right? Like, we couldn't do that, get 3 bids and then say, oh, never mind, we're going to go contract with the Collins Center.
So the Collins Center is exempt from procurement. So even if we went out and solicited the 3 bids, we can enter into a contract with them, regardless if we go through the request for quote process, just because they're kind of exempt from that, from all of those different procurement standards.
Okay.
But I would definitely say, if we're looking at it from kind of the quality of service perspective, I just, in looking at the timing too, because we did spend a number of weeks soliciting with the RFP, I think it would certainly, if references are checked and if the committee is satisfied kind of with the proposal that was received, it would certainly be appropriate to kind of move forward with with that proposal.
Okay, and so feedback on that, I did speak with the Weymouth and Cohasset School Committee representatives on their experience. They both went through their search process with Collins Center in the last 2 years, I think it was. And they both had very positive feedback, and I shared with the committee the questions that I asked. So if anybody else was going to do references, they could have a consistent framework. And they were very pleased with the process in terms of the guidance with obtaining community feedback, doing a survey, doing one-on-ones with key members, doing group meetings, drafting the profile, the leadership profile, posting it, assisting with the screening process. So they did all the different pieces that we've seen in our past superintendent searches. And 2 thumbs up throughout. They said they were very engaged and very hands-on. But I don't know if anybody else was able to obtain references.
I have a question. How does this compare to the last go around when we sourced for the previous superintendent in terms of number of consultants that, or potential consultants that responded to the RFP?
So my recollection is that there were maybe 3 who had responded the last round. And I had asked Katie, do we have any idea of what happened here? I think it's a little bit the timing, middle of summer, but I think also it's the environment that we're in, that all these companies are straight out right now with searches because there are so many places that are looking to replace top talent.
Does anyone have any thoughts on whether part of this, whether this has anything to do with the stuff that the district has been going through over the last 6 months? Not to be conspiratorial, but it's no, I don't think it's any surprise that we've been getting a lot of email. There have been articles or editorial letters in the Clipper where some people have been recommending that we put off, hiring for another year. And I don't want to get into a debate about that, but I just wonder if there's any connective tissue to the fact that we're not getting any, or, any potential consultants besides the Collins Center. I mean, is there anything to the fact that some people might just not want to get involved with hiring or working with Duxbury, given what's been going on?
Yeah, Matt, I would agree. I think gut check is, if a bunch of districts are looking for superintendents, they don't need to come here. So they can pick and choose. I don't know.
Well, there's a limited number of these companies that do this work. And I think we've heard from MASC and from MASS that because of the difficulties experienced in many districts because of COVID this year, there's been a lot of movement among superintendents. And so it may just be a supply and demand issue rather than any particular implications with regard to Duxbury specifically. So there doesn't, that would be my guess, is that there's a lot of business and not that many consultants that do this work. So.
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with the business, but I don't know if it's common practice for a consultant to only sort of work one at a time or work with one town or potential hire at a time. That seems a little strange to me. It would seem like if it would seem to me, I would look at it as business is good. So like if I'm a consultant who's sourcing for superintendents and there's a lot of superintendent movement going on right now, I think what you're saying is like these consultants might have too much on their plate to put another one on their plate, but I would think it would be the opposite. I would think that if there's a lot of hiring going on right now, that more consultants would want to sort of, if business is good, you want to make sure you take advantage of it.
Well, it may be a capacity constraint, I think is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know that's what you're saying.
Right. That
Yeah.
it's not that they do one client at a time. It's that they only have so many professionals who have experience. And if their team is fully booked, their team is fully booked. So that may be the issue.
So
Are there any objections to the Collins Center?
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up question. Was anybody else able to do the reference checks?
I just want to have a clarifying question. Matt, are you saying like, if we don't get companies to want to do this search for us, do you kind of go with trying to extend to 2 years and waiting?
No, not necessarily.
No, okay.
Not
I just wanted to
necessarily. I'm
clarify.
just
Okay.
like, there's just, there's so many things that have been sort of incoming because of these things that the district and that we've been dealing with, that I would just hope that there's not, a sort of black mark on the district right now. And I would hope that we are able to source some good potential candidates, because that's what we want. You know what I mean? That's what we want. I would hope that people are not sort of disinterested in working in Duxbury because of what's been going on. And if that's the case, that would, that speaks to, I think, what we've been hearing from at least some people in the community. That was one of there's a lot of reasons that have been thrown out there. That's one that's been fairly consistent. Like who would want to take the job right now? And the more I think about it, the more I think that there could be something to that. So I'm not necessarily saying that we shouldn't do a search, but it is disappointing that we've only got one person, that we've only have one consultant. And I just, I don't think that it's because there's a capacity issue. That just doesn't seem plausible to me. You know what I mean?
Okay. So it could, that's why I kind of wanted to reissue the RFP again, Matt, because I thought it was kind of the timing, right? Because I think we issued it like right around July 4th, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of places are, people take the summer off, in the kind of education world. So that was the road I went down in my head, was the timing of it was not good.
Yeah.
But now we have the guidance from the state authority saying don't reissue the RFP. So
maybe it is worth sort of having a discussion at some point sooner rather than later on whether we want to extend the extend this interim superintendency. I'm just thinking out loud, but I would just hate to sort of miss out on good candidates, regardless of what the reason is. If it's timing, if it's capacity, if it's the press, I think I would hope everyone agrees we want to have the very best superintendent that we can have.
Yeah.
And if the stars are aligned in such a way that that's going to be really difficult, I would hate to force the issue and then miss out.
Yeah, I will just say that Cohasset had gone through a very, very similar situation as Duxbury when they did their superintendent search, literally like 2 parallel cases to what Duxbury's just experienced. Arguably, one of them was even more challenging than ours. And they had a successful search, and they are over the moon with the superintendent that they found through their search process. So I also don't want to make a barrier there that we don't know exists or not. So I don't want to kind of see monsters in the shadows that aren't there.
Well, and there is one of the benefits to starting the search now, hiring the consultants as soon as possible and starting the search, is that we will answer your question. If we get to the point where none of the candidates are what we're looking for, then we start again or we defer. But we will be only guessing until we actually try. And we can't try until we have a consultant. And the process that we used last time in 2016, I think Shannon already shared with you the timeline from that process, but it involved having a planning meeting with appointing a consultant and starting the process by the end of August. And that process didn't feel rushed. And at the time, there was no feedback from community members who participated in the various focus groups and surveys and things. There was no sense that process was rushed. So I would, if we can say solicit 3 bids and still have the option to use the Collins Center and do so in fairly short term, then I think we could still have the opportunity to use a similar timeline as we did in 2016 and not feel rushed about it, and still achieve the end date that we're hoping for. My concern would be that if we delay too long in selecting the consultant, then we either are in a position of rushing the process and not having sufficient opportunity for community input, for focus groups, for surveys, and for that information to kind of be digested and processed before the screening committee selects and before school committee starts deliberating. So that would be kind of my concern.
Yeah, and then we miss out on the good candidates, right?
Right.
Because there's going
exactly.
to be a lot of turnover across the state and across the country, for that matter, right? And that was one of the reasons for getting out there early, is that the people who are kind of putting their heads up and looking around, we get out there early. And the point, if we don't find a candidate that we think is a good fit, then we address it at that time. To Julia's
Yeah,
point.
I would sign on with that. I think that makes sense.
I just have, actually I lost one of them, but I just have one quick question. So say we hire the Collins, that was my question. If the Collins Center is a good choice and a good firm, like I know everyone likes options, but if they're a good option, I don't feel like we should negate it just because we don't have anyone else, applying for the position. So that's just one thing. And the second is, so say we go through the process and there's no great candidates, what does that do in terms of pay? Like, are we still required to pay them the full contract? Does that just get extended to next year? Because I'd hate to have to spend double the money.
We'd negotiate that in the contract with them. That's
Okay,
typically something you have in there. I mean, I'm sure if they have to do another round of searching, there would be an additional cost to it, but we would just make sure that we keep that tight.
Okay, thank you.
But part of what you're paying them for is for the focus groups and the community consultation, which wouldn't
That would be
have
a
to be
one-time.
repeated.
Right, that would be a one-time cost, right? And
So-
the search cost
Yeah.
is fairly simple part of it.
Well, no, wouldn't those have to be repeated if we decided not to go with somebody? Or is
I
that just
mean-
coming up with questions and is that what you
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, it's building the leadership profile, what the community thinks we need. And once you build
Okay.
a leadership profile, then it's just searching for the right fit, right? So you issue the job posting, you screen, you interview. So it's that piece that you'd go through again,
Okay.
but not all the upfront work, which is really a heavy lift.
I don't know. I guess my question would be if we don't get good candidates, we might change our focus in a year.
Oh.
So this, you know,
Yeah,
I don't know,
Yeah.
anything could happen.
Yeah.
I agree, you know, we give Collins Center a chance because we are in a race with other towns right now for the top pool talent. And we could miss out. And if we do, then we'll deal with it and start over. But I think the sooner, the better that we get started.
anybody else's thoughts on that? I'm supportive of it just based on the feedback that I received from, to the Cohasset and Weymouth. They were, but, I want to make sure that everybody is fully on board with this.
I'm on board with it. I just wanted to raise the issue. It's just that something doesn't seem right, that there's only one vendor that's
Yeah.
showing interest. That's all.
Yeah.
But I'm supportive of moving forward. And if we go through this process and we don't find candidates that are up to what our standards, then we just, we do it again.
Exactly. And we give ourselves time to make that decision.
Okay. Kristen, are you good with this?
Thumbs up. Yep, I'm good.
Okay, all right. So do we need to vote on this, or is just, it seems like it's unanimous that we will proceed with the Collins Center? So Katie, why don't you and I talk about the process and how we can navigate that contract?
Okay.
And then that was thinking getting them on board and having an in-person meeting with them sometime in early September. So we'll do another doodle for that date, but just kind of mentally take a look at your calendars and prepare for an in-person, and maybe we can do it, with pizza or something, kind of do some breaking of bread together at the same time. Okay. All right, and I think going to move on, the next agenda item is the policy discussion. So I'm going to turn this piece over to Julia and Matt from the policy subcommittee to walk through the different, we've got a nice long list. You guys have been working hard.
Great. So going in order of how it's in the agenda. So we have the athletic advisory. These are all second readings. So we have the athletic, which means that all the policies that were in the folder for tonight's meeting have been marked up by our legal counsel. So those will be the changes that have been made since the first reading. If there was feedback from the first reading, that was incorporated, and then the whole thing was sent to the legal counsel, and they've done their own revisions or proposed their own revisions. So that's what all the markup is. And with Athletic Advisory Council, the the markup in red is from the legal counsel, and the markup in purple is from the first reading. It's a consequence of the first reading. Does that make sense to everybody?
I still have a lot of concerns with this policy. My biggest concern is that the administration still has control over deciding over 80% of the committee. So they're involved in picking 80% of this committee. In addition, they make up 36% of the committee. So I just feel like as an advisory council, we still need to get the bottom people represented. So just some concerns that I have, or some suggestions, that instead of the 3 Duxbury High School students, we really should bump that up to 4, and it should be 2 boys, 2 girls, so that they're equally represented. I think that, and I really feel like for both the parent and the students, it should be voted on as similarly, I can't say that word, I apologize, to how the school council is voted on, which people apply for it. A blurb is put with their name, and a Google Doc is sent out, and people vote. So for the students, I'd like to see their peers vote on them. And for the parent, I'd like to see peers vote on them. I'd also like to see, instead of 1 parent, I mean, I guess we have the athletic booster, which is a parent, so I'm okay with that. I definitely think we need 2 coaches instead of 1. I think you need 1 from the the girls program, 1 from the boys program. And instead of it being appointed by the principal, again, it should be appointed by their peers. It really should be appointed by the other coaches. They should be able to choose who they want representing them. I just feel like, and maybe I am misunderstood and misunderstanding the role of an advisory council, but I just don't see how. I'd rather see it, I'll stay positive. I'd rather see parents and students really providing insight and input in conjunction with the administration, instead of administrating having 80% of control over a committee that's supposed to be advising them. So just my thoughts.
Should I drop my bomb now? Are we ready? Shannon?
I think this is a good time for your
Okay.
thoughts on this topic.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't here for the first reading. Let me just say, I understand that this is to supposedly help the athletic advisor, but I don't like this committee at all, which I know is going to be a wildly unpopular position. But I feel like if I was the athletic director, I would not want to be micromanaged. And we have a student handbook. We have an athlete code of conduct. We have a coach's code of conduct. And I feel that the athletic director has worked really hard for input with that. So just my gut check was sort of like, this is a knee-jerk reaction to what happened this year. So now we're going to micromanage a program that should be run by the athletic director. And maybe we need to, and maybe I need to be better educated on it. But that's where I'm coming from. And I did watch the last meeting and I listened to all your comments. And I just still really feel that way. So thank you, Shannon.
Of course,
So,
thank you for
just
sharing.
I can see why you might think that, and I suppose that's one interpretation. But just based on, for example, what was our former athletic director's comments in the Globe article, it seems that we've had a situation in the district for a number of years that the athletic director, who by all reports is very experienced, very professional, very informed, and very highly regarded, there have been instances where he felt that his professional decision-making would not be supported by the administration because of the potential for parent pushback in a controversial coach appointment decision. And Mr. Holgate mentioned this in the article in the Globe and referenced an instance a number of years ago where he made a coaching decision which was reversed. So another way to look at the Athletic Advisory Council is an opportunity for the athletic director to build support for his or her decision-making, particularly when those decisions are difficult. So, we have school councils, which are purely advisory, which work with our school principals. And there have been instances where school principals have advocated for, say, new programs, additional funding, or a particularly perhaps controversial action where the support of the school council has been important and has been an important factor in kind of garnering support. And so I think you could look at the Athletic Advisory Council as a similar body. It has no power, similar to school councils. It is simply advisory. There is no obligation for the athletic director to do what the council suggests. And there's even no obligation on the council to agree or to vote on anything. So, I think that it seems that the situation we have or have had is not worth sustaining in the future, where we have an athletic director who feels unsupported. And so maybe this proposal for an athletic advisory council is not what you would want, and maybe there's a different mechanism. But I do feel that continuing with what we've already had will only perpetuate what we already have, which is in essence a breakdown of accountability within the district. We have an athletic director who though he's in charge of making hiring decisions, somehow didn't feel that he was in charge of making personnel decisions as a result of performance management process. And I don't think that's sustainable or tenable or desirable.
I
I
would
just
totally
think-
agree with that, Julia. Hold on, please. Then that's
Okay.
an administrative problem. So
I was
we
just
get
gonna
rid
say
of
that.
Tom Holgate and we start this committee. Why don't we keep Tom Holgate and start this committee so he has some more teeth for him? So now we're starting this committee because we got rid of Tom Holgate, because Tom Holgate was not supported by the administration. That's sort of how it plays to me. And like I said, I know this is going to seem super controversial to everybody. And I know we had a lot of problems with the football program this spring. The whole world knows we had a lot of problems with the football program this spring. But if there were ongoing issues and Tom Holgate's job was to write an evaluation and put in a folder those issues, and whoever oversees Tom Holgate, whether it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or this year, did nothing, that's not Tom Holgate's problem. That's an administrative issue. And that's fine if administration wants to say, we dropped the ball too. But I just think the whole thing it does not sit well with me. Sorry.
Kelly, I agree with you. And I was going to say the same thing, that it's really a breakdown in communication. And I feel like that's what I've been looking for all along. Like, where was the breakdown and how do we fix the breakdown? Because we're not going to fix the problem with an advisory council. We have to figure out what is the process of the chain of command and where did that break down to cause the issues that we're having. So if we have an advisory council for the athletic department, I kind of feel like, why are we just doing it for the athletic department? Our band program is enormous. Why aren't we having a band advisory council? So I agree with you with those issues. The one thing I do like, if it's done well, this advisory council, and we get a bottom up approach to it, I feel like it's an avenue for parents and athletes and students, non-athletes, to have a voice and a conversation and maybe avoid some of the issues that we had. So I feel like we need to do both. I feel like we need to figure out where that breakdown in communication happened. Why did the athletic director not feel supported, and how do we improve that going forward through whatever policy that we need to make up? So I hope I made sense there.
Yeah, you did. For me, what's resonating is the analogy to the school councils and the way they're set up. And Kristen, I hear you in terms of, well, we have other big programs, I think, and Kelly, the knee-jerk reaction. I think, we do as a community need to take some steps to address what's been happening. And I think the council is one good way to do that.
Do that. I think the council is a good way to do that, but it, like Kelly said, it does not negate the bigger issue, which
Yeah.
was the breakdown in communication. And that's something I've been wanting to discuss for a very long time. But unfortunately, it's difficult to bring that up during a meeting like this. We would have to have an executive session to have that conversation. But that's our problem, like what's going on with that, and how are we not having the documentation to have, like, what's the system? And I just feel like we need a system in place. So I'm okay with this advisory council if it's, like I said, if it's done right, but we also need to address the bigger issue.
Yeah.
And we
Well,
can't place blame on the athletic department when it was a bigger issue, in my opinion.
So what I'm hearing is this is a good first step, but there are follow-up items. And I think we have several follow-up items from a lot of our meetings in the spring as well, in terms of better understanding some of the processes in place. So I think I hear that. Matt, you've gone off mute. Do you want to say something?
No. I didn't have anything planned except to say that I'd like to hear a little bit more from Kristen on the membership concern. Because we're kind of talking about, we kind of veered off and talked about something other than that. So Kristen,
Yes.
can you just sort
My ideal picture?
just recapitulate what you said on the membership
Yes.
side? Because I think you had made some points around beefing it up with more students representation.
Yes. So I feel like there should be at least 4 Duxbury High School students, 2 boys, 2 girls. Make sure there's representation from each of the athletics, girl from athletics. If you want someone from non-athletics, that's fine too. And then 2 boys, at least 1 from the athletic department. The athletic booster is a parent, so the other parent, I'm fine with that, at least 2 parents. The coaches, I just feel like it should be 2 coaches, 1 from the girls' side, 1 from the boys' side, and they should be chosen by the coaches, not by the principal. And both the students and the parents should go through the same process as the school council, which is an election type process.
That makes sense to me. I think that's fine. My one comment is I think we need to think a little bit more broad in terms of, I would like to have like the 2 boys and 2 girls, then non-binary, right? I mean, we're kind of in a whole new world. So I do want to kind of.
We need someone who's going to represent the boys athletic program. I mean, it's called boys hockey, boys this. So I mean, if you want to non-binary, that's fine. But then we need 1 girl, 1 representation from the girls program, 1 representation from the boys program, and 2 other students. Does that sound good?
Yeah, something like that. I just think we need to start using, the broader inclusive language as part of our DEI initiative. So maybe we can just put some broader thoughts to that. Dr. Klingeman has a comment.
Go ahead, Kristen. I can go when you're done.
I was just going to say, but okay, that's fine. I'm good with that. I don't know another way to have a representation of the boys athletic. I mean,
no, I think you're.
Okay.
I think you guys are in agreement, Kristen. I think what you're saying.
Okay.
We need 2 representatives for the boys program, 2 representatives for the girls program. All Shannon's saying is that we don't want to say we got to put 2 boys. and put
Female
2
or
girls
male.
in.
Yeah,
That's-
exactly.
I'm
exactly.
sorry
Yeah,
about that.
That's all right.
Yeah, no, it's
Um,
okay. I'm just,
I appreciate the feedback.
I was just going to add that I'm a little nervous about the coaches. Again, if there needs to be additional coaches on, I think that's great. But if the coaches are picking the coach representatives, I don't know if all the coaches know all the other season. There's a lot of seasons. The coaches may not have a lot of interaction with each other. So I'm wondering if we can think of possibly another way for the coaches to get nominated, whether it's by the AD puts nominations forward and the coaches vote on it or something like that, because it might be hard for the coaches to know who would be the best voice for the coaching ranks, given that we have 3 seasons and lots of different coaches that are very busy and not necessarily communicating with each other and unaware of who might be the best voice for their group.
Good idea. Kristen, tell me a bit more about, you mentioned several times the communication problem. Can you help me understand what you mean by that?
As in, I'm not sure, as what I was saying, communication is when like Kelly had, I was following up, I think, on what Kelly had said regarding like, where is the chain of command? So as
Okay,
Kelly said, the AD wrote his report. Where does it go from there? And if there's a concern, where does it go from that point? What is the chain of command? Is that what you're asking me?
I think that that's kind of what I thought I understood. So maybe that's something that we could talk about on a general or hear about at a future school committee meeting about how staffing decisions, how the performance management process works, and what should happen or what does happen in a kind of generic way. I don't think it's appropriate for us to investigate, particular people and particular events,
Nope.
but I think you're right to try and understand, okay, what do we
Abroad.
intend the process to be? Is the hiring manager the performance manager, and who has priority in decision making, that kind of stuff? I think those are all valid questions to ask. So maybe we could work with Dr. Klingeman and Mr. Keady to kind of elaborate a little bit on that for us at a future meeting. Would that be helpful?
I would love that.
and I think it fits in with some of the topics we'd already identified. I think we have
Right.
the performance piece identified, and then we have like the investigational complaint piece. We also identified as 2 topics, both of which we
Right.
wanted to kind of have better
Right.
insight into. So
Yeah,
I think it fits into both a little bit.
If we're
Yeah.
talking about the athletic department, though, in terms of the AD's role and the AD's role in evaluating the coaches, and then the principal's role in hiring the coaches and reviewing the evaluations, I think there might be some misinformation that's been shared based on articles, for one. I just want us to be really careful about that. But also, that's something that I thought the Athletic Advisory Council was going to have a hand in, is talking about the structure of how coaches are evaluated.
Okay.
Kristen had mentioned just really looking at ways that we can get objective feedback from all stakeholders involved with the sports team,
Right.
from families' experience with the season, the student athletes' experience, the athletic director's experience, and managing and working with the coaches directly, as well as any feedback that Mr. Donovan might receive. So I think that part of the work of the Athletic Advisory Council would really be to delineate and clarify that process, and so that the community is really clear with how that happens. Because right now the feedback was pretty one-sided, that our athletic director was evaluating the coaching staff and submitting the evaluations to the principal at various times during the year. And I think sometimes when those evaluations are turned in has a part in what you're able to do at that time. And so I think sometimes we need to have a deadline. So if it's fall sports, when the fall evaluations need to be completed and submitted, having that be a really fair process. And then that way the principal, if there are concerns, can work with the athletic director to make some difficult decisions and be able to post positions if indeed there are concerns that came up. But I don't think that was always the case, just to be clear about that. But I think that would be a great task of the Athletic Advisory Council if you do decide to vote that into a policy.
Agreed. Agreed. So what would you guys like us to do? We've got the changes to the membership section that Kristen is proposing. Are you all happy that we add those?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And then Dr. Klingeman, do you want to add something under the council's role about what you were just speaking about, the process for
I think
evaluating?
I think that would go in the I think that would go in the athletic program handbook.
Okay.
We can check with Mr. Donovan about that. I don't necessarily think it needs to go in the policy.
Okay.
But I do know that Mr. Donovan would like to come to the next school committee meeting with some recommendations for the athletic handbook with the new athletic director, and perhaps we can decide if that's the appropriate place for that to go, and then the
Okay.
council could advise on any revisions to that throughout the year.
Right. Okay. No, that would be good. So so maybe the next step with this policy is for me to add Kristen's suggestions to the membership thing, and then it'll be ready for when we have Mr. Donovan and the interim athletic director come and speak to us about any proposals they might have to finalize it. Does that sound like a reasonable process, everybody? Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so then next on the list with policies, we have JEB, which is the entrance age policy. And we had a first reading of that last time. So any further input once you've seen the legal counsel's revisions?
I just want to make sure it's clear that it gives the principal discretion, right? Because I think in the past,
Right.
it felt like they didn't have the discretion, and now it's clear, right?
Right. In the past, the previous policy, there was no discretion to admit, for a principal to admit a child who was not yet 5 years old
Mhm.
as of September 1st.
Okay.
And now that discretion is
It's provided.
included.
Okay. Okay, no other questions for me.
Okay. Right. Is everybody happy with that? Right. Then we have BDE and BDE-E. So BDE is a policy that basically describes school committees' power to appoint subcommittees. And then BDE-E is a kind of guidance document to go with that has the general duties of a subcommittee and then the specific duties of the policy subcommittee. So as you may remember from the first reading, we wanted these two policies so that we could have a policy subcommittee, basically. So you'll see that legal counsel just changed a few words. And so does anybody have any further feedback for that? Are we good? Okay.
Good, thank you.
And then we have BEDH and BEDHE. So this is around public comment. BEDH is policy for public comment at school committee meetings. And then the BEDHE is guidelines for public comment at school committee meetings. So
I thought everything was good. The school committee will have 2 15-minute public comment section. I didn't know if we wanted to put in there as time allows. I know that was mentioned somewhere else. Because right now for our meeting today, which the policy isn't in place, but we only have one. So
Yeah,
that was my only suggestion on that.
I like that because it gives a bit of flexibility if we feel pressed to have a short meeting for a particular topic, then that might be useful.
Should it be 1 to 2 public comments as time allows? Do you want
Yeah.
to spell it out that way as well?
Right, 1 or 2,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
okay. Does that sound good? Any other feedback from a lot of the strike through text, I don't know if you spotted the legal counsel's rationale for striking out some of the text. It was that the view was that we didn't want to have the same content in different places because or different policies, because then it gives, there's a risk of you change one policy and it don't change it in another policy, then over time it could diverge and cause issues. So that was the rationale there.
I just want to say thank you. I know that was a lot of work for you and Matt, so thank you very much.
Yes, Matt did a lot of work on that.
Did you
okay, so
mention,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, Julia, did you say BEDHE too? Or are we just on the BED?
Well, I put them both together because
Okay.
they're the same, functionally the same topic. So
Okay,
one
I
is the
just had-
policy and one is the guidelines.
Okay, I just had one question kind of for the guideline, and I didn't know if when it says can put it in writing or may request to be placed on an agenda item and it should be emailed to the superintendent or written to the superintendent. I didn't know if we wanted to include the chair on that email. I don't know if that's appropriate or not appropriate. And then my only other question was, I thought, and I could be wrong, I'm learning, but I thought the agenda was the like the ownership of the committee. So if someone wants something on the agenda, does the chair have the sole power to say no? Shouldn't it go to the committee to decide yes or no? And I feel like in here, it says more like it would just fall to the chair to make that decision.
Usually
Help
it
me
has,
find where you
usually-
are.
yeah.
I'm
It
slightly
says
lost about where you are.
any citizen who wishes to make a presentation to the
Oh,
school
right, okay.
committee.
Yeah,
So they were
Usually-
my only thought. I think, and I agree with Kelly, like you guys have done an amazing job. I can't imagine how much time you've taken, so I appreciate it. That's just my only questions.
Usually there's language like with agreement of the committee or something, right? To kind of indicate like the chair is organizing it, but if there's a disagreement, then it goes to the vote of the committee.
so it does say further down, Kristen, it says the chair of the committee works with the superintendent to formulate the meeting agendas. So I think what it's trying to say, and this particular text is based on the MASC model, this part of it, so that the request could go to the superintendent, but then the superintendent and the chair sit down and decide what actually goes on the agenda on which dates. That's kind of the process. That's the process we've been using, I mean, so far. So I
I'm
think,
fine. I guess my only suggestion was that if they're emailing the superintendent and it's an agenda item, shouldn't the chair be CC too? That
Sure.
was just a minor point,
I read
Right.
that.
but that really,
I don't read that way, Kristen. I read it that the citizen who would like to make a presentation to the school committee, and that would be up to the superintendent and the chair, as opposed to the school committee yourselves wanting to add an agenda item and voting on whether the item. So I think this is separate than if someone outside wanted to do a presentation, it would be up to the chair and the superintendent to determine if that was appropriate.
I would disagree with that. I would think it would be up to the entire committee.
for a presentation from an outside citizen?
Yeah, because I was always under the impression that the chair set the agenda, but then Glenn's training this spring said, no, it's the school committee's agenda. So that's a really nitpicky fine line. But I would think that we should at
it's-
least have a
yeah.
say.
So maybe we need to put in here if that if there's any, before a request for a presentation is turned down, the school committee should be consulted or something like that. So that if a citizen requests to make a presentation and the superintendent and the chair think that that's kind of a poor idea, that they at least have to check with the rest of the committee before they do that. Does that
Yeah, I
Yes.
think even if
Well
they
said.
think it's a good idea.
make sense? Okay.
Good
Well, if
idea
they're going
or
to
for
say,
it.
go ahead and make the presentation, then you don't need the school committee's agreement. It's only if they're refusing, then they should check before they refuse.
This is a presentation. This isn't just public comments. This is
Right.
adding something to an agenda. So is this on the public comment thing or is this in the
It's
agenda
guidelines for
section?
public comment.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I'm looking at the, sorry, I just switched over to the MASC. I want to see what their language was.
So yeah, the chair would guide the public comment,
Yeah, I mean, you need one
you mean
person.
just a
So this
presentation.
is,
under
this is
public comment.
something,
Okay.
this is something that's not under public comment. This is something that would have to be put on the agenda. Right, and so I just wonder if this is the right place for that to fall. I mean, could we have a reference to the agenda policy instead of having it here? Otherwise, you're having to look here for how you
Right.
navigate the agenda.
Right, because if it's something a citizen wants to put on the school committee agenda, I think the entire school committee should have a say. Whereas if it's public comment, that's
That's,
up to the chair.
Okay. Well, I don't have all the policies in front of me right at the moment. So let me do some checking with that, because you may be right here, that this section should go under the agenda. How to put things. But I think it's kind of the idea is that if somebody has something they want to say to the committee, they're going to consider that that's a public comment. And so the guideline, they'll be looking up the policy for public comments rather than the policy for how the agenda is formulated. So it may be worth having at least some reference here. If you have something you want to present to the committee, then please reference this other policy.
Yeah, and I see now I understand, because if you're falling under public comment is owned by the chair, period. So this is why because it's under public comment, that's why it's the chair making the decision, not the committee as a whole. But if you slot it into you're creating your agenda, then it's upon the agreement of the committee. See, that's the distinction of these two things.
Okay.
So maybe a reference to follow the agenda guidelines.
Okay.
But we
So
definitely you would definitely want to get outside the legal counsel to.
Yeah, so maybe the
Sign off
thing,
on
what
that.
we do with this, the BEDH-E is the next step would be for Matt and me to kind of create some wording and tie it into the agenda policy and take it to legal counsel and then come back to you with a revision at another meeting. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. But is everybody with the BEDH, just the public comment policy, is everybody had their say on that? We ready to vote later on that one?
Mhm.
Okay, great.
The only thing I want to say that doesn't directly impact the policy itself is I'm going back a few meetings, probably 4 meetings or so, but Shannon, you had mentioned that you wanted to regroup, I think with Julia, on the issue of when comments are made, that we want to be able to sort of circle back and loop back to open items or items that, rather than just, thank you for your comment, and then sort of they just go out into the ether. I don't know if you recall, you had said that you and Julia were going to go back and talk about putting some sort of, process together so that we could make sure that we circle back on some comments that I'm guessing that you guys think are the pertinent. So I don't know where that is, but I just wanted to remind you that we should probably sort of keep that in the forefront, particularly now that the summer is coming to an end.
No, that's a good reminder. And I think we are, you know, to the extent we could, yeah, yes, good reminder, Matt.
Yeah, if you have any input, any suggestions to make as to how that process should work, that would be great to hear.
Well, I think that would be a chair decision. So if somebody wanted to follow up with the chair and say, can we put this on the agenda? That's how that would work. Or how can I get a follow-up? Maybe it's just a call
Yeah.
from Danielle but I think
And
that should be vetted through the chair.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I've been trying to do it the last 2 meetings or something. If somebody says something, then there's a quick, oh yeah, we're going to discuss that the next meeting, or yeah, the answer is X. I think we're trying to give a little bit more dialogue to the extent we can without turning this into a conversation, right? Because at the end of the day, these meetings are supposed to be our business meetings. And then sometimes I'll say, Danielle, can you follow up? Or I say, I think there was one where I said to the person commenting, why don't you and I have a conversation, you know, offline? And then I did. I talked to that person one-on-one. I've done that several times. So to Kelly's point, I don't know if we need to document that,
Okay.
but let's consider it. Maybe we ask legal counsel if it's a good idea, but there are times when we're not going to be able to say anything and we're not going to be able to respond. So we also don't want to mislead that we can always have a follow-up on things, right? So it's something I think where we need the discretion on how to handle things.
No,
Right.
I'm not suggesting we do. I'm just commenting
Okay.
that was a point you had brought up a few meetings ago. and-
Yeah, I think we're trying hard to do that to the extent we can, right?
But our policy specifically states there'll be no discussion. It's not a Q&A. It's not.
Right, and
Yeah.
that's exactly right.
Well,
Yeah.
Kelly, that's the
So-
how. You're talking about the how. I'm talking about, like, if the community feels like they make public comment, we listen to the public comment, we say, thank you for your comment, next. And the community feels like, well, there's nothing sort of like being done about my comment. I think that was what I interpreted Shannon having said 4 or 5 meetings ago. I'm not suggesting that, no, we're turning these into a conversation. I'm
No,
saying
that's not
that-
what I'm saying, Matt. So my question is, what's the how?
Well, you didn't ask it that way.
Yeah, I said, I think that would.
You said this can't be a conversation. So we don't have to
Well,
talk
no,
about it.
what
Oh,
your
oh.
policy that you just wrote said, and that has been our policy, it states it's not a conversation.
That's
So
right.
to follow up on your question, what happens when people want to follow up? Do they contact Shannon and ask it to go on the agenda, or Shannon decides Danielle can answer that, or Erin Weezahan can answer that, or Jim Donovan can answer that? Just to clarify, because it's really 2 different things.
Yeah, agree.
I think Shannon has done a good job, and even Dr. Klingeman, in addressing some of the issues that have come up in public comment. So I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn, but I think just kind of keeping a running list and then addressing it at the next meeting. I think they've tried to do that, and I appreciate it. I also think what you're saying, if a parent feels that they need to add it, then that's addressed in the guidelines, and hopefully they would then email Danielle or Dr. Klingeman or Shannon. That's my 2 cents.
Okay.
Julia,
Okay.
Yeah.
for
Sorry.
the BEDH,
Yeah.
are you gonna add in the 1 to 2 meetings? Because you said we're gonna vote on it.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
So that was my only concern. Do we need another proof of it before we can, or vote on it?
Well, what we could do is when we come around to vote, I can make a motion to adopt the policy with the addition of, and then I can read the sentence and we can vote on it that way. And that, or if you prefer, we can defer, and so that you have the complete document and we vote on it next time we meet. It's up to you. But we've done that in the past where we've just tweaked a few words and voted on it with the understanding that those words get changed.
I'm comfortable with that as long as everyone else is.
I
Okay,
am as well. I think that's fine from a
Okay.
rules perspective.
okay, great. Good. And then the next on the list is the IJNDB, the Empowered digital use policy. So you'll see the changes in blue were the changes that Mrs. Lewis was proposing at our first reading, and then the red is the from the legal counsel. So are there any questions or concerns with what they've done?
No,
It looks as if the body of their adjustments is to be more specific about what's described in the last section on illegal activities, basically. That's a lot of the description, is to be very specific about what's not allowed. So, okay. Right. Are we happy to go ahead with a vote on that?
yes, I see nodding heads.
And then the last item, again, it goes back to public comments. I didn't want to do it out of the order in the agenda, but Matt had suggested having a post on the website with some explanation of our public comments policy. So this is what that is. And so,
And that also went through legal counsel.
yes, so the adjustments in red are from the legal counsel.
Okay.
So all we would need to consider here is the idea here is just to have two quick sections. One is a quick primer for the public on the scope of public comment and participation. But then secondly, which I think is actually the more important item, is on the next page, which lists out the drafts that we have under review. So, I mean, it would seem to me, and I see that other districts do this on their website. It would seem to me it would be important for us to have a running list of the policies that we're considering so that the public can see them. And I think it would also be important for the public to be able to weigh in and give us advice on policies that we should be considering. And that's what this second sort of page gets to. So if we're in agreement that we want to do this, we just need to understand who would be responsible for making it happen on the district side. So I don't know, if Danielle, if that would be you, just working with your staff, but I just want to make sure that if we're in agreement that we want to do this, that it gets put on the project list.
The update of the website with this language.
Yeah.
Yep, we can certainly update that whenever you have language you're comfortable with.
So it would just, I think it would just be that the policy gets posted to the website after the first reading or at the first reading, and then gets taken down once it's voted on, right?
Correct.
Is that the idea?
Yeah, it's kind of
So-
like it would be the public facing version of our policy pipeline that we refer to.
Right. Okay.
That's why.
But we had
yeah.
as part of one of these policies is that there was a 10-day period for people to comment on policies after the first reading. So would that mean that you wanted them taken down after 10 days? Or after?
I don't
after-
necessarily think they'd need to be pulled down after 10 days. Although if they're up there, it could create some confusion. But it's actually that 10-day reference is actually on the language on this document, on that second page. So it says,
Okay.
Current policy drafts under review are listed below. Normally,
Right.
the period for public comment will be 10 calendar days following a first reading, so a school committee can consider comments before its final deliberation.
Right.
Well, I'm sure we can get creative on the site by saying, just putting like a date stamp of when the policy's put up. I don't think it has to
Okay.
get too fancy. So
Yeah.
just,
Okay.
We can link.
I think
all
I think the broader point is just the public should be able to see like what policies we're working on, and they should have an opportunity to weigh in.
Right. Right. Okay.
We can,
Cool.
Matt, we can put the link to the policy and then the date of the school committee and the date where comments need to be submitted by right next to it.
Sure, something like that would be fine.
That
And
would
if
be
there are
great.
if there's nothing in the pipeline, then it just says so. There's no policies under review at this time.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Love it. It's great.
And then lastly, just a comment. So, and I think it speaks to the need for this. So after, now I'm going back another, I guess, 2 or 3 meetings, we talked about policies that we wanted to consider. I think this was sort of like late spring, early summer. And, the ones that I think we were all in agreement that were kind of vital importance were around things like harassment, whistleblowing, and items like that. So I've been getting emails and texts from people on like, where are those? So it's my feeling, and I had brought this up in our last subcommittee meeting, that these are so important that we want to make sure that there's, adequate public input on how we shape these policies. And I didn't want to do these policies like in the summer when people are on vacation and are thinking about other things. So my thinking on the whistleblowing policy, specifically around harassment, we'd want to visit, maybe even at the first school committee meeting after the year starts or something like that, just so we can really make sure that we put together a robust group of people in the community that can weigh in on that item. So it doesn't sort of feel like we're just sort of, doing it in a vacuum.
I think that's great, Matt. I think it's great that we might have the other policy that you just discussed about having the public comment on the website. If that's up and running first, it would definitely open it up for community involvement. So I think it's a good chain of workflow. Is that what your word is, workflow? So I
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah, agree. If we can get that website piece working, that'll help a lot. Okay, well, that slides right into the next topic, which is the schedule for the year, right?
So we put the dates in the memo. I hope you had a chance to take a look at them. We had to have one Tuesday meeting. The way the Jewish holidays fall in September, there's a lot of multiple weekdays that are impacted. And so we needed, especially on Wednesdays, so we needed to move one September meeting to the Tuesday. And we were also trying to avoid open house nights. And I did want to share, while we were talking about the calendar, that the Chandler open house is scheduled, I believe, at the end of Yom Kippur. So we're going to be at the next school committee meeting coming back to you with just the change to the open house dates. And then we had another adjustment on the school day time that was on the calendar that you already approved. So we wanted to just come back to you and warn the community that their open house dates will need to be slightly adjusted. But we went through the school calendar and we went through the Jewish holidays, including Hanukkah. That was another Wednesday that was impacted. So we don't believe there's any conflicts with any of these dates. We generally meet twice throughout the fall and then once as the spring goes on. And then I think certainly when you're conducting the superintendent search throughout the fall, you might be adding additional school committee dates that may or may not be on Wednesday evenings, but I'm sure you'll figure that out when you hire the consultant that you'll be working with and establish that process. We will be going back to in-person meetings beginning in September, and that's something that Katie and Mike Woodford are working on to make sure that technologically speaking, we're able to live stream the meetings so that parents and community members can watch live. And we talked about the public comment being where people that are attending in person would be able to make a live public comment, and anyone that is not able to attend live would be able to submit their public comment to be read by the school committee chair at the meeting during the public comment time. But those are the dates. We have the meetings going back to 6 p.m., which is what we were doing prior to switching over to Zoom, and we'll be in the school committee room in Alden 104. So those were the dates. I don't know if anyone saw any conflicts when you looked through them.
Was going to suggest that maybe we hold open a couple of dates. The 1st of December, so that's the first Wednesday in December, and then Wednesday, January 26th, because that time of year, not only are we hoping to be doing the superintendent search, but also we have the budget process. And I know Katie's going to talk with us more about how that schedule will play out, but typically there's kind of a lot of discussion around the budget right before Christmas and then into January when the town is finalizing the operating budget proposals. So maybe we don't put them on those dates on the calendar, but perhaps we could somehow pencil them in so that there aren't conflicting school events on those dates, so that we have the opportunity to use those if we feel we need to. Does that make sense?
How about we list them on the school committee website for dates, and we'll just indicate that the December 1st and the January 26th are saved if needed. But we won't
Okay.
schedule, and I'll just list them that way.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, are we good on that topic? So now we are at comments from the public. Comments from the public section of the meeting. It's an opportunity for members of the community to address issues of concern about policy, budget, or administrative matters, or share ideas about how we can work together to improve the Duxbury Public Schools. We value your input and respect divergent views. We only ask that you limit your remarks to 2 minutes and refrain from airing grievances with individual members of the school community. Thank you. Dr. Clement, I'll ask you to help me with the technology of bringing folks over into the room. Ms. Greenwood has her hand up.
Ms. Greenwood, you should be able to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to, hopefully this is okay with all that chat about public comments. I just have a little prepared thing that's something that it's about bills in the Massachusetts legislature that I think is very relevant to the community and the schools. So I'm just going to read my statement. I urge everyone to research this information for themselves. Do not take my word for it. Please research. So I speak as a parent of a vaccine injured child, and for the past 14 years, I've experienced the repercussions of vaccine injury and have researched extensively. There was a hearing on July 12th for Senator Rebecca Rauch's bill, S1517, named the Community Immunity Act. I testified in opposition to this bill along with over 400 other Massachusetts residents. This hearing was over 15 hours long, and it was there are many troubling things in this bill. I'm just going to highlight one, but I do recommend everybody read it. It strips you of your parental rights when it comes to vaccination, and it places the medical decision-making process solely with the Massachusetts Department of Health. There were hundreds of parents who testified whose children had disorders that would cause serious harm, if not death, if they received certain inoculations. This bill would force the parents to choose educating their child or putting their child's life at risk, which is an impossible decision. S1517 did state that religious exemptions were allowed, but at the same hearing, her fellow legislator, Andrew Vargas, conveniently filed Bill S24 in Massachusetts. This would be amusing if it wasn't so disturbing. Senator Roush's new bill that she submitted this week, S2723, mandates masks for all school-age children, as an FYI. Again, I asked everyone to do the research themselves. So last spring, I supplied the schools with probably 10 to 12 studies regarding the health risks involved in wearing masks. I've accumulated probably 20 to 30 more studies about the health risks of wearing a mask. This decision should be an individual choice. Destiny is not responsible for the health of my children. I am. To give perspective, you're more risk at dying, are more at risk of drowning, and are 10 times more likely to die of cancer than of COVID. So just to put things in perspective. So I just want to make people aware of those few bills that are out there, especially that most current one. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Greenwood. Okay. Looks like we are at the end of public comment. I don't see any other hands raised. All right, so now we move on to our action items. First item is to vote to approve the custodial memorandum of agreement. Can I have a motion to approve the MOA with the custodians, please?
I move that we approve the memorandum of agreement with the AFSCME Duxbury School Custodial Employees Union.
Second.
Thank you. Julia?
Aye.
Kelly?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
And Shannon, aye. Okay, next on the action items, vote to approve a small gift donation. Dr. Clement or Katie, do you want to give a small overview of it?
Sure. So I had placed a brief memo in the folder for tonight. So the Duxbury Public Schools has been gifted with a cash donation in the amount of $2,500. And that was generously donated from Mr. Vance Thomas and Miss Susan Thomas. And so the donors had expressed that they would just like the funds to be utilized to help with continuing high standards in education. So not a specific program, but just to be used in any way that the administration sees fit. So just upon acceptance of the gift, the funds would be deposited into the district's small gift account, and the notification of receipt would be sent to the donors for their records. And then once we find an appropriate expense to allocate the funds against, an update would be provided to the committee. And I had also just included a copy of the policy, the school committee policy for small gifts and donations, and that's policy KCD. And that's included along with the memo.
Great, thank you. What a wonderful gesture from community members. Okay, can I have a motion to approve this donation from the Thomases, please?
I move that we approve this gift from Mr. and Mrs. Thomas.
Second.
Great, Julia?
Aye.
Kelly?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
And Shannon, aye, and thank you again to the Thomases. Okay, now we're on our list of policies. So I believe we're skipping CEB for tonight. That'll come back again. And then JEB, that's ready to vote, correct? With no changes? Okay, so can I have a motion to approve policy JEB?
I move we approve policy JEB.
Second.
Great, Julia?
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
and Kristen.
Aye.
And Shannon, I. The next two, BDE and BDEE, are these, was there a minor change to one of them? I lost track of these two. Or are these two ready to go? Julia, Matt,
These two are ready to go.
these two are ready to go. Okay. So can I have a motion to approve BDE and BDEE, both related to the subcommittees of the school committee?
So moved.
Second,
Julia,
aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
and Shannon, I. Okay. And now we're on to the two public comment policies, BEDH. Is this the one that we are approving with a slight modification?
Yes, so why don't I say I move that we approve policy BEDH and section 1 of page 1 of the policy shall read, at each regularly scheduled committee meeting for which the agenda calls for public comment, the committee will have 1 or 2 15-minute public comment sections as time allows.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Great. Julia,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
Shannon, I. Okay, and then BEDHE, that will be updated and come back, correct? Oh, you're on mute again. But I saw
Sorry,
yes.
yes.
I saw yes. Okay, and then we have IJNDA, blah, 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 IJNDB, which is the DPS Empowered Digital Use Policy. And I think
Yes.
that one is also ready, correct?
Yes, correct.
Can I have a motion to approve that?
Motion to approve.
Second,
Great, Julia,
aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
Shannon, I. And the last item, public comments text for website, and that includes the language and then also just the concept of how we're going to navigate that in terms of
Right.
putting first readings on and then taking them off when they're approved. Can I have a motion to approve the public comments section of the website?
So moved.
Second,
Julia,
aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
Shannon, I. Okay. We have made it through the agenda. So I'd like to thank everybody. Tonight was a lot of great discussions tonight. Appreciate all the focus and the engagement. And I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Julia,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
and Shannon, I. Thanks, everybody. Hope everyone has a great night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.